tell me to. I caught the COVID cooties. Now my life is like a movie. I caught the COVID cuties. Now my life is like a movie. I'm not staying home. I'm filming all the empty hospitals. Posting crisis action sheet, we're running through all of these psyops.
COVID Cooties by Symbia, best COVID-19 track of 2020. It is 9:10 p.m., 8/20/2023, and it's hard to believe it's been this long since that year, that we've already gone through a couple more years since, and most people have already forgotten all about it. Everywhere I go, I see mask-free people, even the hospitals here. For a long time, they were clinging to their masks, bitter clingers, but no, mask-free environments. And just in time, we have this new strain coming out. I believe it's called Eris or something. I saw some name Eris, goddess of chaos, but there are indications, leaks, rumors. Alex Jones is spreading some information about this, that they're going to bring back COVID era restrictions for the TSA, masks, and who knows what else. I don't know if that means everybody everywhere is going to, but it looks like masks may be back in fashion in the coming couple of months. I really don't think they can play the same PSYOP against it. I mean, you might think that they're simple. You might think the PSYOP entertainment complex is something you've outsmarted, and in many ways, I think we have. But they're smart enough to employ their Machiavellian logic and their wisdom from, Sun Tzu, Art of War, all the classics of psychological warfare, which all say that you never do the same tactic once it's become orthodox. You don't do it again. So I don't think they would do the same exact thing without a major league plot twist. Although this has all the hallmarks of being somewhat similar, but I don't know what kind of plot twist it would take. I'm open to alien invasion in the form of AI. Okay, let me see here. We have about 18 people, a few more showing up. I just sent out live stream notifications via the newsletter. We're live on Odyssey, Rofkin, YouTube, and Twitch. Won't be hard to find us. I sent out a link in the emails. Okay, first topic today, Fetterman. Now, Fetterman was seemingly replaced by this is something that's been going on for some time. The idea that he had a double, he even made jokes about it. But yeah, this picture here on the left and the one on the right was brought up as possibly not the same person. And I think it has to do with focal length on the camera. I mean, the guy on the right looks like it could be perhaps somebody else. And there have been a number of people speculating on this for some time. But anyway, this is only the first time. That was the first time that he was accused of being someone else or having been replaced. But that rumor is back again, as now he has another apparent body double. And I don't think this time they can explain it by focal length. So if you look here, you have the new John Fetterman, who has a striking resemblance to Walter White. I mean, the previous body double looked like Woody Harrelson with like a bald cap. You might see Woody Harrelson, not the same nose. I mean, yeah, you could say it's focal length of the camera, but I don't know. Like, I've never had someone take a picture of me with the camera where I just suddenly switched into Neanderthal. Like, that's never happened to me with a camera. Like Funhouse mirror. You're telling me that a focal length difference is equivalent to a Funhouse mirror? I don't buy it. Now here again, the new Fetterman, which people are saying isn't the same guy, and I'm seeing a few differences in the ears. Like his ears no longer stand out the same way. They're using glasses, and instead of a goatee, he's got a mustache. But yeah, he looks like Fetterman. Vision for the Blind said, I thought the last body double they used was bad, but this one takes the cake. Right. Right. Look, the nose is completely different. And they'll say what they can. They'll say it's the lens, the camera, it's your eyes. It's like 2 plus 2 is 5. But I don't know about that. More discrepancies. Do you remember the dead dog that looked just like the cadaver dog over there in Maui? Well, it's adjacent to aluminum, which melts at 1200 degrees Fahrenheit. You know, the cremation temperature. Interesting that the dog, subject to the same temperatures, didn't melt. Anyone explain that? Joined by Evolvement, Lean Dion, Jennifer Reeves. Thank you for joining. I was just live painting. I was actually wrapping up that very large painting, and we had a lovely conversation about narcissism and mass media, and why the mass media and the dominant culture of the day actually tries to create narcissists. And the reason why is that the mass media itself is a construct that's designed to function that way. It's a personality operating system, and it's because of the dynamic that they want it to have. It's all about domination, control, judgment, etc. And the more people who fit that profile, who can essentially do their work, the better. You know, they want a self-regulating society, and so that's why Big Brother's a narcissist, and all of the mask Karens and all the enforcers and the censors and even the snowflakes, they're all part of the same. Molly Rollins tweeted, George Floyd died from climate change. I had speculated that. You know, I can't breathe. That's like, you know, it could be the carbon. It could be the climate change. Makes it hard to breathe. Gaia can't breathe. You can hear Gaia saying the same thing. I can't breathe. Now, if you want to follow my live streams where I paint, it's on Twitter. Just follow me on Twitter, and randomly throughout the day, I'll just be live. It's a new feature. It's actually not new. It's new to me because I'm on a new account. My previous account was shadow blocked by our savior, Pope Elon. I got a tweet from Lex Luthor regarding my comment to Maverick X. So Maverick X is one of these channels who just tweets pictures of celebrities and says, what do you see? And most people say, I see a reptilian, or I see a elite gender inverted Satanist. And he just leaves it up to your imagination. He just throws it out there. What do you see? Like a Rorschach test. It's infuriating because he gets tens of thousands of views without even committing. He's completely anonymous, but these views are all coming from the transvestigation crowd, and that's growing. Like, I'm saying that it's probably bigger than the Mandela effect, the transduced. So here's an image of Paris Hilton a few years ago, and it's not a wardrobe error. It's not a wardrobe flaw. It's not a malfunction, that is. You're not looking at a wardrobe malfunction. Obviously, with these celebrities, if they're out in public and they're paparazzi and they show too much skin, it was on purpose. It's advertising. But when they try to sell it to you directly, it comes off as self-promotion, it comes off as gross, and nobody cares. But when it comes off as you weren't supposed to see this or is accidental, everybody cares. It's an interesting marketing tactic. In fact, this actually works for a lot of things. You could sit down and explain your entire point of view to the camera and be ignored by anybody who doesn't agree with you. But if you explain the same points in an interview and there's a third party, people look at it differently because it doesn't seem like it's direct self-promotion. Well, in this case, this is obviously self-promotion disguised as spontaneous. And you're looking at Paris Hilton, who has a hole in the side of her pants purposefully cut out, and you can see a little too much flesh. Now, what does Maverick X mean when he says, "What do you see here?" Well, if you go to the comments, hundreds of people say they see a man, or they think it's male genitalia. That's what they're all saying, except for a few individuals who know what they're talking about, and their comments are a little clear. They know what it is. I don't want to read these comments. I mean, I'll read a couple. Ransan, no, I don't want to read these, do I? They're pretty bad. My point being, what you're seeing here is a purposeful display of flesh, and most of the people here who follow the account think you're looking at a man. So they think they're looking at male parts. That's what they think. So he asks again, "What do you see?" He shares these pictures, and all these people are just going off on how they are seeing a man because they're truthers and they see the truth. So I responded to this with, transvestigators are engaging in full-blown fan fiction. They ignore any evidence that proves their theory wrong. And what I mean is, this photo, and I did a right-click search on it, it actually is part of a collection of photos that were purposefully released by paparazzi, and there's a number of photos, and you can clearly see that it's a woman. But if you just took one of the images out of context and you have a biased audience that's predisposed to believe that every man is a woman and every woman is a man, they fall for it every time. So I've gone through his channel, and here's another example. He posted this SpaceX rocket with a dummy on it, and he says, "Can you see?" This reminds me of the Emperor's New Clothes. Can you see? Like, what do you mean, can I see? Of course I can see. One, it's gaslighting you to ask if your perceptions are actually working. And then it's a loaded question because he's implying there's something that should be seen here. Anyway, my point being, this was a dummy. This is Ripley. His name is Ripley. Now, Ripley is a dummy that SpaceX put up on the rocket. He's 6 feet tall, and it's not a real person. But most of the people here thought this was some kind of a glitch, or this was some kind of a nefarious, I don't know, way of dealing with one of his enemies. Musk strapped one of his enemies to a rocket. My point being, these individuals are just sharing stuff without even vetting their misinformation. It's infectious. The people with mind aids just lap it up and they share it. Lord Dorkington says, "It's just a girl sack. It's normal and fine." Right. I'm going to read a couple of the comments here. There's 60,000 people looking at this, and 1 in 100 makes a little bit of sense. No, I actually cannot, because the thing is, these clips will be taken out of context in the future. Oh, here's a good one, though. Glenn says the ring finger is way longer than the index. So apparently, and this is forensic anthropology, and he can tell this even though her ring finger is curled up. I mean, her index is curled up. If your ring finger is longer than your index, you're a man. You may not have known this, so might come as a surprise. Might find out you've been calling your mother, you've been thinking of your mother as a woman, but you gotta check out those hands. And they get this bad. A lot of them do investigate their parents. Now, here's another fascinating facet to this whole theory. And I don't know if you're going to call it a theory or just fan fiction like I call it, is they say it's all celebrities. All of them. But it's nobody you know. Then you're like, wait, you never meet these celebrities. You have no way to verify it. it kind of puts evidence and falsifiability out of your reach. But then what if someone you know gets famous? Or maybe you know somebody who used to be. It gets to be a little tricky because some people will defend these celebrities and say, no, I knew this person. So I guess they claim that these elites start off as children and that they're swapped at birth as part of this plan. Anyway, it's not a very coherent theory. I'm only bringing it up because this is indicative of our age and the age of Aquarius and the info deluge, where it's a flood of information, and even if it was true, none of it has any context where it makes any sense. It's a huge grift. Fascinating. Salty Siren says, I've noticed a grift of biological females faking as trans and blowing up on social media. Now that's intriguing. Like the NPCs, like people will find any sort of niche to exploit. So you're talking about phony trans. Fascinating. I didn't see that coming. I didn't see that coming. Although enough of these investigators have accused me that I could probably pull that off. Salty Siren also says Blair White's ring finger and index finger are the same size. Now Blair White is the right wing token trans. Is that the one? The one that Alex Jones is like all in love with now? No judgment, but he's married. I mean, but it's like one of these other things that they claim that they have a science, skulls and look at the finger lengths. But the thing is, it's not science if it can't be proven wrong. And I've been saying from the beginning, hey, your whole approach is unfalsifiable. Fascinating grift, though. So, in other words, if I were to pretend online like I was a biological female, and then at some point I could probably grift off it if I want. Do I have to pretend to be an NPC? Eat ice cream or whatever they do? The NPC thing was bad enough. I could be a fake trans NPC, and probably make $30,000 a month or more in tips. Okay, this is not new, but this take is pretty good. You remember Covid Kapoor? Covid Kapoor is the model who wore and it has a Masonic symbol on it, but she wore this outfit with the mask a year before COVID. And a lot of people talked about it. They're like, this is weird. Project Runway, her name's COVID, and like 33 weeks before the first case, she's on TV saying she can't breathe with a mask. That's interesting. But Brother Berg said, or mentioned this, but Michael in Truth said, there's no coincidences. All of their entertainment is comms. All of their everything is comms. And almost no one can see or hear them. Now, that's a really valid point. And I make this point in the Autohoaxology textbook, simply that predictive programming is not an anomaly. It's not like 1 out of 100 movies has it. No, it's actually far more pervasive than that. And you could say that all of the media that is coming from this same perspective, the same worldview, and if it's coming from any of these big networks, it's going to contain elements of this build up to whatever agenda is coming. It's definitely not a once in a blue moon thing. It's literally every movie. And it's every news show, every news every single breaking news story. It's because it's context. Context is everything. Now, we're still waiting on Elon Musk to turn off the blocking function on Twitter. I can't wait. There are so many people who've blocked me, who I am pre-writing tweets. There's an individual who could go to jail, prison, for felony identity theft and hacking. Provable, caught in the act, reported to the FBI, but they don't do anything because I don't have whatever it is that you need to get their attention. But yeah, there's that account, a few accounts that he has. And I can't go over there and accuse him of these crimes in front of his followers. And I'd love to. But he blocks me every time I do that with all of my accounts. Well, once that ban is lifted, I'm going to go ahead and, pay a few visits. There are so many people who have tried to avoid accountability. I think we should not be able to block people. If you're blocking people to avoid any kind of, um, I guess, fact that you don't want to be held accountable to, you don't want to be exposed as a hypocrite, harassment, and all of that stuff, obviously, we understand. That's not what he means. Okay, Michael Letts pointed that on 8/12/2022, Salman Rushdie was stabbed in the eye while speaking on stage at New York. This is an Antichrist ritual mimicking Zechariah 11:17. We covered this when it happened. He wrote the Satanic Verses, author Salman Rushdie. His book drew death threats from Iran's leader. And he's 75 years old. He gets stabbed. Now, he was stabbed after a 33-year long fatwa had been hanging over his head. Satanic Verses, here's all the news about the 33-year-old fatwa. Friday's knife attack. Now, was this on Friday the 13th? Anyway, Friday's knife attack on Salman Rushdie was 33 years after the issuance of a fatwa against him. The reward for killing Salman Rushdie, $3.3 million. So there you have it. $3.3 million bounty. 33 years later, he gets stabbed and he loses an eye. Fascinating. The other night we were talking about Rodney King and how the Rodney King beating ties into recent events like the Tyree Nichols beating, but more recently the Alabama event with Reggie King hitting people on the head, and it kind of brought us back to talking about the LA riots and Reginald Denny getting hit on the head, because the name Reggie and the meaning of King being connected to it. Rodney King, Reginald Denny. Well, anyway, it turns out Reginald Denny was hit on the head by the brick when he was 33. Salty says he told Blair she was doing God's work on her last show, and she doesn't even believe in God. Yeah, I find his show to be surreal these days. I really do. Because it's like an open secret, more or less, that they're all part of this Q psyop, that they're all part of this. They're basically carrying water for the Republican Party. I mean, Alex Jones and Trump are one and the same. They've tied the mission together of basically solving all the conspiracies that Jones have been talking about all these years. And remember, Jones was radicalized at Waco. Waco, you had a 33-year-old burning to death. Dave Koresh said he was Jesus. He was going to come back for the apocalypse in some kind of super light bodies. Didn't happen. Timothy McVeigh was there passing out literature. He too was radicalized like Alex Jones by the Waco conflagration. We were talking about this because McVeigh's attacks were based on the Turner Diaries about a race war with the white nationalists having nukes. And the Turner Diaries has been brought back into our recent frame of reference because the McCloskeys in 2020 stepped out on their lawn with their guns pointed at BLM. And they were stepping right off the cover of the Turner Diaries. If you look at the cover, it has a man and a woman, husband and wife. She's got a striped shirt, and he's got a polo shirt. The police are on the streets. And it was quite literally the photography, the photo op of the McCloskeys on their lawn with their weapons was meant to match the Turner Diaries. That's why they were hanging out with Kyle Rittenhouse. That's why they went on a tour and wore the same uniform, the same outfit, all contrived. But the Turner Diaries is about the turning point when the government goes too far and grabs the guns. Well, what was the number of rounds at Waco that the government went for? 1.6 million. What was the number of rounds that Waco radicalized radio host Alex Jones talked about on Piers Morgan when he said, if they come to take our guns, it's going to be 1776 all over again. The government had 1.6 billion hollow point rounds ordered. 1.6, 1.6. Donald Trump launches his Final Battle 2024 presidential campaign in Waco. The day before, Netflix releases Waco, American Apocalypse. Final Battle, Apocalypse, but 1.6 million rounds, 1.6 billion rounds, January 6th. You can kind of see. And who was leading January 6th? Alex Jones. He was right there. So looking at this, you can see in the patterning that this was set up long in advance. It's all in the script. Now, back to the Turner Diaries. The conservative movement, or I don't know if it's called the nationalist movement now, the big government nationalist movement is organizing mostly around conventions and meetups, specifically Turning Point USA, or TP USA. And Turning Point USA, Charlie Kirk's organization, is all about this. It's all about the government's gone too far. This is the turning point. And I'm saying the turning point is 100% a Turner Diaries reference. It's about this upcoming whatever it is they're setting up. Jay Diggs says on Art Bell's wiki he interviewed the Turner Diaries author. Well, the Turner Diaries' author was born on 9/11, 1933 by William Luther Pierce. 1978 novel. It was 42 years old when the McCloskeys came out, and here again you can see the cover of the Turner Diaries, and you just need to compare that with the McCloskeys, and she's wearing that same Hamburglar shirt. Now, not only did this inspire McVeigh, but it even contains predictive programming for 9/11. It has a bomb-laden plane crashing into the Capitol. Explicitly racist, anti-Semitic, the Bible of the racist right by the FBI, that's what they called it. It's developed the white genocide conspiracy theory. So all this white replacement stuff that's been tied to shooters going up to the supermarket like in Buffalo and shooting blacks, all fake, but it was basically the response to the so-called replacement theory. They blamed it on Tucker Carlson of all things. Tucker sent the shooter because he talked about this replacement theory. But this replacement theory ties into this white nationalist movement, which we're all front row to it. They're all worried about age of consent and how the women don't want to have babies. They got to get rid of abortion. Need more trad values. Barbie's going to corrupt the youth. That's what they're focused on right now, because these incels are aging and they're not reproducing. Now, it had something in this book called Day of the Rope, where race traitors, those are like basically liberal whites, were dragged from their homes and publicly hanged in the streets of Los Angeles. And that was called Day of the Rope. These executions are filmed for propaganda purposes. Now think about that. Hanging their political enemies and filming it. Day of the Rope. Now, Day of the Rope was a phrase that I heard on January 6th, leading up to it. Far-right symbols seen at the U.S. Capitol, they actually made references to Day of the Rope. And if you've listened to QAnoners or follow them right now on Twitter, all they do is talk about executions and tribunals and how bad they want to see Ellen DeGeneres hanged, how they want to decapitate Tom Hanks. I mean, these are some bloodthirsty lunatics. I hate to say it. And if you're a QAnoner and you don't think you're a bloodthirsty lunatic, explain the fetish that this whole group has for murdering their enemies and filming it. I was told from the very beginning that they're going to round up the bad guys and kill them, and we're going to watch it on TV, stay home and eat your popcorn. The left are seen as dupes or agents of the Jews. And again, the Jews took over the Constitution, fair and square. There's all kinds of stuff in here. It's anti-Semitic. It's basically everything Nick Fuentes believes. but it's based on white nationalists getting their hands on nukes and taking everybody else out. Now, again, it does have a reference to a plane crashing into the Capitol, very 9/11-y. And again, like I said, the author, William Luther Pierce, was born September the 11th, 1933. Another interesting connection here. 30 days, actually 90 days before September the 11th, it was 6/11/2001. Timothy McVeigh, who was inspired by this book, died at the age of 33, and he was executed at a place that had. Now, if you're familiar with the McVeigh theory that he's not really dead and he's back as Agent Weissapal, yeah, obviously, McVeigh was killed on 6/11, and you know where I saw 6/11 show up very conspicuously? Sound of Freedom. In Sound of Freedom, Tim Ballard is given this pendant from one of the children that he rescues, and it says on it, Timothy 6:11. And I thought that's got to be intentional. Timothy 6:11 was like the main thing in the movie, and again, 6/11 is the date associated with white nationalists and the nuclear attack, like you see in the Turner Diaries. Timothy McVeigh executed on 6/11, and here is Sound of Freedom, Timothy 6/11. Fascinating tie-in, but there's more. Okay, here we go. Timothy McVeigh, Oklahoma City bombing. His hatred of the government intensified after the Waco, which resulted in the deaths of 76 people. That number stood out to me as significant as well. Now listen to this. McVeigh was the first federal prisoner to be executed in 33 years. You believe that? So not only was he 33, but he was the first federal prisoner to be executed in 33 years. And he's another martyr for the white nationalist movement. And again, Dave Koresh was 33 when he was incinerated. So he's the first federal prisoner to be executed after 33 years, and he's at a place, and this was covered in the LA Times, in concert at killer's death. And this article is about how there were all sorts of strange number 33s attached to him. So here you go. One could not help but notice, but his address for McVeigh was P.O. Box 33. The prison grounds had 33 acres. His final appeal was Legal Procedure 33. His death was attended by a classical music accompaniment, and the conductor, I think his name was Woodward. Yeah, here you go. Woodward is the guy who's the conductor of this musical accompaniment to his ascension, to his execution. So a 33-year-old conductor is playing music while this 33-year-old is executed at this 33-acre compound after his last attempt to stop it with his legal maneuver 33, first of the federal prisoners in 33 years to be taken out. And there's even more. The song that they played at his execution was supposed to have ended with the ring of a triangle attenuating for 3 minutes and 33 seconds to overlap with McVeigh's last living moments. I mean, what do you make of all this other than fake? And he's the domestic equivalent of Osama bin Laden. 6/11, 9/11. Think of the relationship. Domestic violent extremist leader, external violent extremist leader, terrorist leader. The 9 and the 6 being flipped. Elephant Tusk says the audio has improved dramatically with the new computer. Peter Free says I stopped listening because the audio is so bad. Yeah, thanks. I had a terrible computer, and one of our supporters, a Patreon and member of the think tank, had one sent over here to the office. I mean, that was a majorly important upgrade. I'm glad we have it. And not only that, but it's a gaming computer. It can handle everything we do here. I can now take calls via Skype. And we also have the 24/7 live streaming capabilities. By the way, I'm going to be on the phone in the next couple of days, hopefully tomorrow. I don't see any obstacles. I have a couple things to do tomorrow. Might put those off for this. Woo's News. I'm getting Woo's News on the phone to talk about January 6th. I also have a few other individuals I'm reaching out to in the coming days. It's got to become a, if not a daily thing, a few times a week. I want to have a guest. There's so much ground to cover. I need to re-interview people we've spoken to a few years ago. Jay Diggs says Oppenheimer's badge at Los Alamos was K6. There's your 11-6. Again, 6-11, 11-6. 11-6, the Batman movie got them underwater after the radicals sent by the Riddler, who represents Q, breaks the dam and floods the election, floods the polls, just like the midterm slogan of the GOP, flood the polls. They said flood the polls, and the Batman movie actually has the polls flooded. Again, the 6'11", 11'6", the actual movie Oppenheimer is 11 miles long, weighs 600 pounds. This has been reiterated so many times, and it all connects to this upcoming helter-skelter turning point Turner Diaries situation. And I think I know how it plays out, at least from the scripted perspective, is that like what we saw at the summer of 2020. They play on these tensions, they let things erupt, but I think what they want to do is they want to say America is so systemically corrupt, its problem cannot be solved from within. The police cannot be relied upon to solve this because they're part of the structure that's responsible for this two-tiered system, this oppressive presence, the defenders of the polluting capitalist system that caused George Floyd to die because he couldn't breathe because of the climate change. I mean, these are inseparable. You can't separate climate change from capitalism and the police who defend the propertied class and oppress the poor by necessity. This is all their claptrap. Not saying it's true. But this is the game board as it's been set up here. And I think what we're supposed to see is that the West is not sustainable because it's based and rooted on exploitation. That's what the Avatar movie was about. Like, we finished killing Gaia. We basically vampirized all the resources, so we go to Pandora. But we're being fought by the indigenous. And we find out that Gaia was alive, and so is Pandora. And the whole movie is about how the indigenous people with their spears and their rocks beat the Marines with their machine guns. Just like they played out in Atlanta, where the environmentalists were defending the forest against the cops who try to start a cop city training area. Again, cop city versus the environmentalist activists was basically Avatar 2 played out right there in Atlanta. And again, Avatar 2, The Way of Water, about these Atlantean types. Lean Dion says there's a recent Turner Diaries reference from Fed. Yeah, on 4chan. On 4chan, they're like, things are about to get real Turner Diaries up in here. Okay, so we talked about Senator John Fetterman. Looks like Breaking Bad's Walter White, which he does. And from a marketing perspective, Walter White is way cooler than Uncle Fester. Like, I would vote for Walter White. Now, you remember I was talking about the 23 years that have elapsed since Final Destination came out, and how the opening scene was just like the crazy plane lady? Well, Plane Lady did in fact recreate Final Destination's initial scene where she's trying to tell everybody to get off the plane. She did so 23 years later, and whether she knows it or not, she inadvertently did something of a PR stunt, because the new Final Destination is coming out this year. And it's a reboot 23 years later, starting from the beginning. Now, the very first Final Destination movie I'm talking about from 23 years ago, and all of them actually, they have like these little clues and Easter eggs all throughout. And specifically, the number 23 is very heavily represented in the Final Destination movie catalog. Like, there's this Route 23 or Exit 23 where this log falls off a truck and kills somebody. Well, interestingly enough, here we go. In the movie, Route 23 pileup in New York, 23 killed by, basically started with the log. This just happened a couple weeks ago. Final destination in real life. TMZ reports, fatal car crash with log and lumber falls on the car. So they have made this connection with Final Destination 23 years later. I'm sure more people have been killed by logs than just this one person and this hypothetical situation in the movie. But they made this connection. And it's 23 years later, and 23 is totally encoded into the movie. So they took the Route 23 killing and made it real, or reported it as real. I'm finding it hard to believe this is all a coincidence. Then we have, and this might be coincidental, we have the new variant out called Eris. And Eris is the goddess of chaos. If you don't know the story, she wasn't invited to the party up there on the top of Olympus. She was mad about it, so she rolled a golden apple into the fight. And it said something like, "For the most beautiful." And all the goddesses fought over it, and this started the Trojan War. So you have this connection with Eris is the goddess of chaos and discord. And again, her number, the number associated with Eris is 23. So this is where I'm saying there's something here. Discord, chaos, the number 23. The goddess is throwing the apple. Again, here, the Discordians chose the number 23 to associate with Eris. If you haven't heard about the 23 Enigma, it's a whole series of connections to the number 23 that, we'd look at it as metascript. Now, but it goes back. The concept of the 23 Enigma has been popularized by various movies, books, conspiracy theories. Now, the Discordian Society or the Discordian Secret Society, whatever it is, they basically centered their whole movement around this number and the goddess. The number 23, the movie, was inspired by a Discordian, Robert Anton Wilson, and his book The Cosmic Trigger about the dog star, which he associates with the number 23. The dog star is what awakens Jim Carrey, who was in the number 23, but he awakens him from his Truman Show role as a false man into a true man. Robert Anton Wilson cites William Burroughs as the first person to discover this 23 enigma. He says, according to Burroughs, a certain captain once bragged that he sailed for 23 years without an accident, and on that day his ship sunk. And then he noticed other synchronicities with a crash in an airliner, Flight 23. So this number 23 enigma thing is mostly about synchronicities that are viewed in pop culture, a lot of these movies. You've probably seen it. 2007, number 23, starring Jim Carrey. A man becomes obsessed with the number, while reading a book about that number, and it seems to be about his own life. But what is the meaning of it? Dr. Nicholas Rush from the Stargate universe says it references half the number of chromosomes in a human cell. Now, I don't really care for trying to find an exact meaning for any of these numbers, but I'm just bringing this up because it's associated with this goddess Eris and chaos and discord, and how 23 years ago, a year before 9/11, that movie came out, and it opens up with a plane explosion. A little bit of predictive programming, and I'm wondering, could the reboot be foreshadowing something? Now, this summer, the strain called Eris, a descendant of Omicron, has dominated the coronavirus subvariant universe, infecting more people than any other strain. Now, I'm not sure if there are any strong connections here other than to point out that the viral phenomenon of the plane lady disrupting everything, the connection with the upcoming reboot of Final Destination, I might be reaching, but Eris is in the news. The number 23 is intrinsically intertwined in the Final Destination, and it has been 23 years, and they are rebooting it. So, again, am I making these connections? Not quite sure, but I'm putting it out there. Portal Complex says TSA whistleblower drops a lead on a new lockdowns in October. Now that could be a connection as well. The fact that she's at an airport when this is all going down, and airports are now reporting that they're going to lock us down again because of Eris. What to know about Eris, the latest strain? One other thing, these are just words, but they are also symbols. Like Corona, the novel Corona was the new crown. 911 days later, is it that when the queen dies? So we need a new crown. I mean, they use these words in very specific ways, and the predictive programming gives it away. So there's no way a name like Eris could be insignificant here. And I think it might be worth looking into what this could mean. Again, the whole idea of the golden apple. Now, weirdly enough, I actually picked up a book. The other day I was driving around, and I told you about this. There's all these thrift stores, and I get this really cheap book, and it's from the Illuminatus trilogy by Robert Anton Wilson, connected with this whole Discordian thing. And the book that I found has a main character named Saul Goodman. You know, Saul Goodman, like from Breaking Bad. But anyway, I have part two. I haven't read part one. It's called The Golden Apple. So I actually just started reading a book about Eris and how the Illuminati secretly worship Eris. So she is a very significant character in this whole story, and this ties into the number 23 movie and probably the Truman Show. Now, you really can't separate this number from anything else. Now, it opens up with some writing from Crowley. I started reading it. Even here, it has some writing from. Look, this book is more or less kind of like a fictionalization of all the conspiracies all put together in one, like one narrative. So it's conspiratainment, but it's based on, quote, real conspiracies. Now, here's what Portal Complex referenced. This is Alex Jones talking about the whistleblower and the upcoming need to lock down because of Eris. And what he said was, TSA whistleblowers told him employees were instructed on Tuesday masks are coming back by October for travelers, and COVID restrictions, full restrictions, by December because of this new dangerous variant coming out of Canada. So the Canadians brought it. They're going to blame Canada for this one. Going through your comments, Portal Complex says Eris is the second largest dwarf planet. I'm trying to remember what I recall about this Eris character in the Golden Apple. And for the most part, it's based on what Robert Anton Wilson referred to as guerrilla ontology, which meant something about creating chaos in order to break paradigms, paradigm shocking. So it kind of makes sense. It really does make sense in the bigger context. You could look at psyops as creating chaos so they can install a predetermined or pre-decided new order or template. So I'm like, there's probably a reason for it. Okay, continuing. Going through my Twitter feed at AutoHoaxology. Again, if you ordered the book, I placed one order on Friday and another order's coming in on Monday. Rather, I'm going to be ordering a second one. So I think we'll have a full 20 copies ordered by the end of tomorrow. And then on the 23rd, it goes public. And still a few things going on attached to that. The whole idea of putting the textbook out there is because we need something of a, not a Bible, but we do need something that we're all working off of. So we cannot be mischaracterized. Oh, those people who are questioning the news are dangerous. I'm like, oh, really? It says, according to our books here, we're just skeptics, and we're applying skepticism to our hyper-mediated environment in the most rational way possible, taking away assumptions that could basically stupefy you. And I think a lot of people will see the sense in it. But this is why I think it was important to get it out in a book format. But it's not enough. Not everyone is going to read it. I don't want to just preach to the choir. And I have a more extensive video project that I'm working on. I don't want to say documentary. It's more like an explanatory thing, but I'm working on it now. I've been working on it for a little while, and I'm talking to a couple of local journalists, independent reporters, who are very interested in having a conversation about this auto hoax concept. That will be produced before the end of this month. That's one of the reasons why I've been up all day painting and up all night. I've just been here in the studio painting because I am paying for a professional cinematographer, and then I'm also paying the journalists for their time. But it'll be worth it. It really will be worth it because there's a conversation that is never going to be had on any of the mainstream or alternative outlets. There's never going to be a conversation that doesn't begin with every premise as established, according to the screen. There's no perspective that veers from that. Everything that varies even or diverges is adding on to it. They add, they never subtract. And this idea of skepticism applied to media is about subtracting, not adding. Okay, Donald Trump will be arrested at the 33rd parallel in Atlanta next week. Hurricane Hilary hitting the 33rd parallel on Sunday the 20th. This has been pointed out again by an individual on my Twitter feed. Does anybody here care about Hunter Biden's laptop? I know most weekends a lot of MAGAs are going through the print version of it. You can actually get print versions of Hunter Biden's laptop. And a lot of people are thinking that this is going to sink Biden. People on the right, that is. That, the worse we can make Hunter look, the better off we are. And they have just been piling on him all this time. And I haven't been able to care about it at all. And I did look through it. I looked through the laptop, and none of it looked real. So he's sitting there naked or half dressed with some lady on the bed or whatever. None of it explains, or none of it really proves anything. I mean, there's insinuation. When you do have pictures of him, there's usually clothes on. There's some element of like they're joking around. Like, in other words, it looks staged. I think they staged it. I think everything in that Hunter Biden laptop is staged and fake. And what's more, the people on the left love Hunter Biden. They don't have any problem with it at all. And I noticed that they make a point of showing Joe Biden going to church as a Catholic. So what I realized is that this story actually connects with people. It doesn't turn off Catholics. It doesn't turn off Democrats. I'm saying that they're tying into a very popular story with Catholics, which is the prodigal son, who runs off, wastes his money on drugs and women. He comes back and his father forgives him, like God forgives him. The parable that we're talking about here, the prodigal son, is almost kind of identical in the same story because it's two sons and it's the young one who runs off and is foolish. So you have Hunter and Bo, and if you look at the two of them, yeah, I can kind of see that. And then the idea that he would come back and he wouldn't be thrown away, that he would be elevated even. Yeah, I think this is meta script. I think this is a story picked out of the Bible to make the right wing look like hypocrites, to make them look judgmental and hateful, and possibly get some of them, I don't know, sued. That is happening because they're engaging in these major privacy violations, but it's also brought out the worst in a lot of people. A lot of MAGAs on Twitter are manufacturing fake stuff out of the laptop because there's nothing there. Like, there is no illegal porn on that laptop, but they will manufacture it. They insinuate. They're more or less making up their own fiction about how depraved the Bidens are. Raleigh, North Carolina, deranged liberal sets fire to a Trump 2024 yard sign. That's not very green. And Tim Pool is offered $5,000 to reward anyone who can catch this person. Someone else did as well. Does it mean anything? Like if I say right now, I will add $5,000 for information that leads to the arrest. Like, why is Tim Pool any more credible than me in this regard? Like, I'm going to go ahead and add this here. Me and Tim Pool are going to each throw down $5,000 if we can catch this arsonist. There we go. I tweeted it. Okay, I'm catching up on your comments. I had a long conversation with the crisis actor who said, "No, I'm not a crisis actor. I'm a real person. Let's debate my pain." And I pointed out, oh, well, you're fake crying, you're hyperventilating, and you're emotionally manipulating your viewers. Your complaints had no substance, just vague grievances and self-pity. You could probably get a job with the Government Actors Guild if you're not already a crisis actor. And she blocked me. Like, I thought we were going to debate her pain. But this video has gone viral. Millions of people have heard it. It's just a lady fake crying in her car. And I've noticed that there's a lot of people doing this about the children. They're crying about the missing children in Maui.
This is for entertainment purposes only, and only my opinion, so that maybe TikTok will take this shit fucking down.
Okay, I'm not going to listen to her again, just pointing it out. I've been calling out crisis actors left and right, and there's a lot of them talking about the missing children in Maui. So the new theory is, and I've seen this spread even on Alex Jones, that there are children that were zapped by the lasers or burned or incinerated, and nobody's talking about them. So first it was the missing trafficked children, then they stopped caring. They started burning Barbie dolls. But now they found some new missing children to rally around. Chart topper Richmond of North Richmond follows Jason Aldean's lead and soars to #1 as the left slams the song as right wing. Not everyone thinks this song is reflecting their values. Jim Stewartson, an anti-Q guy, says, "It's a pro-Confederate racist dogshit song from a hobo who spreads conspiracy theories about Jews committing 9/11. It's quite a review there. Now, it can be said that it's not as organic as many people first thought. I didn't think so at all, because I'm super cynical about this stuff. If something goes viral and everybody on the right is sharing it, and it's uniform, it's probably meant for us to pay attention to. Here's an example. Here's Alex Jones talking with a guy who claims that children were sent home from school even though the governor knew there was a fire danger and then they all burned to death and nobody's talking about it.
Home.
Now they all do this. They all take their time to inhale, exhale. They rub their faces. This is crisis act whoring. He's a crisis act whore, and Alex Jones is participating. He's crying over
because of the fires. They sent the children home, but their parents were at work. The sirens didn't go off. There's not good cell reception. And
no pictures, no evidence, just a bunch of people here crying about these hypothetical children that are missing. And I see all these truther channels. Now, truther, Troofer, is a term coined by Les Luthor. Truthers are basically truthers who are falling for the Mentanol, the red pills laced with the Mentanol. They get emotional. They fall for stuff like this. This is an emotional appeal.
Again, I pray for a miracle. I believe in God. I believe in miracles. I pray that these 1,200 missing are found and the casualty numbers stay exactly where they are. I pray that these children that were sent home from school somehow, escaped.
Always trying to save children. All these, that's Jason Jones, hopeforhawaii.com, crisis acting like all the others. I've seen a lot of people doing this, and I haven't seen any evidence, and I'm like, who are these people getting emotional about these hypothetical missing children? Are these the same actors that were, I don't know, promoting Sound of Freedom like a year ago or 6 months ago, or it's like there seems to be a pool of actors. Like one month they're crisis shaking, pretending like the vax gave them some kind of a seizure. Next they're promoting, we got to find the missing children. Then it's we got to burn the Barbie dolls, and now it's we got to save the missing children from Hawaii that may or may not exist. They got dude, the children that got the Maui blast. So yeah, the Chinese space lasers vaporized 1,200 children and nobody's talking about it. Why isn't anybody talking about the 1,200 children who've been vaporized by the Maui direct energy weapons? They did the do, and only Alex Jones is talking about it. But they don't care about the kids that are shot by the guns. They only care about the kids that are killed by vaccines and direct energy weapons. Mountain Dew predicted Maui and Baja. Maui burst, Baja blast, Hillary Clinton's hurricane. If you don't believe the story about the melted children, then you hate children. And if you're not talking about Sound of Freedom, you're a child trafficker. All right, this is great. Look, I have to take off, unfortunately. I don't have time for calls tonight, but we will resume tomorrow. I spent the entire day painting, but it's all part of the big plan. I want to say thanks to everyone who ordered Auto Hoaxology 101. And if you haven't ordered a copy, there might be a couple more slots available on the pre-order, but it's going to go public in 3 days. It's very important to get out there, if you ask me, mainly because we are, I would say, the vanguard of what I consider to be a parallel media. And it has a philosophical basis. You could call it a philosophical movement, but skepticism isn't new. But it needs to be reintroduced into a world that is in a bind, in a state of philosophical crisis, where the brightest minds, the smartest people are all plugged in to this same operating system, which takes as an authority the screen, like it's a window to the world, when I'm saying it's a filter. And if you don't account for that filter, you can't be objective. And if you can't be objective, and if you're in their world of subjectivity, you're left at the mercy of your chosen pundits to help you sort through 48 hours of misinformation a day. Appreciate the support there, Moon. And I wish I had more time to take calls tonight. Like I said, I have to get back to a couple of other projects, but we'll be back early in the morning. And if you want to follow me on Twitter, I will likely be live streaming there in the morning, wrapping up this painting. It's pretty much done, but I want to touch it up when I have better lighting. All right, this is great. 60 people in chat. I'm going to try to resume the text alerts here very soon, but this is not a bad number for a Sunday night, mostly unplanned. And we also lost our 2 main channels, so it's actually pretty good. 60 doesn't sound like a lot, but there's about 30 on Odyssey and 40 more on Paranormal Radio and TuneIn. Our numbers are going up, but it's not about the numbers. It's about the quality, not just of the information, but of the listeners and the human intel. Because we are informed. That's a big deal when you consider that the rest of the media ecosystem consists of the misinformed, and it's all by design. All right, well, I'm going to go back to the 24/7 live stream. I'm going to turn off a couple of the YouTube channels, but we'll be in the Gilded, continuing our research. Infinite Research Society.
Father, hallowed be your name. Your kingdom come. Give us each our daily bread, and forgive us our sins. For we ourselves forgive everyone who is indebted to us. And lead us not into temptation.
call.